Welcome to the second episode of our show, Pakistan, a hard country, where we delve into the complex realities of Pakistan through the lens of Anatol Lieven's thought-provoking book. Today we're doing a deep dive into the first chapter, specifically looking at pages 18 to 31. That covers the sections A Gamble on the Indus, the Pakistani economy, living in Pakistan, and then a note on kinship terms. And even just in these opening parts, you really start to see the high stakes involved right from Pakistan's beginning and some of the intricate ways society actually works on the ground. We're basically going to unpack the foundations Lieven sets out for you here.
Absolutely. And these sections are just crucial, I think, for setting the stage. They lay down the bedrock for understanding the challenges, but also, surprisingly, some of the strengths that Lieven explores later. Chapter 1, it really doesn't hold back. It throws you right into some of the core paradoxes that define Pakistan.
Okay, let's dive right in then. A Gamble on the Indus. Lieven immediately hits you with this total dependence on just one river system. It's a water economy living right on the edge, isn't it?
Oh, completely. And that reliance makes Pakistan incredibly vulnerable. I mean, Lieven's warning is stark, right? He talks about regular big floods worsened by climate change and says they could literally destroy Pakistan as a state, as an organized society. It kind of dwarfs other concerns when you think about it on that scale.
Yeah, it really puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
And it's not only the big dramatic floods he mentions, it's also the slower crisis of groundwater. He points out it's being overused unsustainably. The quality is dropping in lots of areas.
Exactly. And what's worrying is his observation that there doesn't seem to be an effective response, not really from the government or international donors. The water table is just getting deeper and deeper. It's urgent.
And this reliance, this gamble on the Indus, it goes right back to partition, doesn't it? How the country was formed.
It does. That's a key point. The partition basically baked this vulnerability in, leaving the headwaters largely outside Pakistan's control. So it's not just environmental, it's deeply geopolitical too, especially with shared rivers.
Okay, let's shift gears to the Pakistani economy. Lieven gives this description that feels, well, almost contradictory. He calls it divided, disorganized, economically backward, corrupt, but then in the same breath says it's surprisingly tough and resilient. How does that work?
Well, that tension is sort of the key to understanding it, I think. The problems are real, no doubt the weak structures, the corruption he mentions, but there's also this incredible capacity to just keep going, despite it all. Maybe it's the informal economy, maybe strong social networks acting as a buffer.
Mm-hmm.
He does mention these islands of successful modernity and bits of excellent administration. Not everywhere, obviously, but enough to keep the wheels turning, perhaps.
So not totally bleak. There are these pockets keeping things afloat. But he also mentions the impact of floods again, how they just hammer the infrastructure, setting back development.
Yeah, that's a constant drag, the infrastructure damage. But then there's another surprising point he makes. He says Pakistan is not quite as unequal as it looks from outside.
Really? What does that suggest?
Well, it suggests that maybe wealth distribution is more complex than the standard numbers show. Perhaps informal sharing, community support, things that don't always show up on spreadsheets.
Interesting. Okay, moving to living in Pakistan. This section digs into how society actually operates, especially around authority and justice. It sounds much more fluid, more negotiated than you might think.
Exactly. It's not just state law running the show. Lieven stresses this interplay between state law, Sharia law, Islamic principles, and then local community laws, customary laws. And people, they learn to navigate these different systems. They kind of pick and choose based on what they think will work best for them.
And his take on the police force, well, it's pretty blunt, weak, unreliable. He uses that phrase, brutality tempered by torpor.
Yeah, that phrase says a lot. It suggests they can be harsh, sure, but maybe not consistently effective or motivated. Low pay is part of it, he suggests. The brutality hits the vulnerable, but the torpor means maybe not much effective policing gets done overall.
And the formal courts, the state judicial system, seem even less trusted. He talks about a real, deep-seated loathing among ordinary people. They see it as just politics, basically. Everyone with power tries to bend it their way.
Right. And that cynicism, that deep distrust, it's crucial. When people don't trust the state courts to be fair, they look elsewhere. That's partly why there's this hunger for Islamic Sharia law he mentions as a source of, justice. He quotes Imran Aslam pointing out that justice rooted in Islam resonates more than abstract democracy for many.
Which leads us to these jirgas, the informal community councils. They sound like a really fundamental part of how things get sorted out locally.
They are. It's customary law and practice.
Yeah.
Disputes get handled, often by respected elders, maybe religious figures, based on local consensus. It's a way to bypass the state system, which, as we said, isn't always trusted.
But he doesn't romanticize them either. He points out some really deeply disturbing decisions that can come out of Jurgis. Horrific things, especially against women, executions, forced marriages, trading young girls, and that awful Mukhtar Mai case, the gang rape punishment.
Yes, it's vital to see both sides. These systems can absolutely perpetuate terrible injustices and inequalities. They operate outside formal human rights frameworks. But Lieven does offer a glimmer of potential change, too. He gives that example of a Sardar, a chief, who refused to allow girls to be given in compensation and insisted on money instead. So even traditional systems might evolve, slowly.
And the problems with the formal system seem to have other knock-on effects, like police carrying out extrajudicial killings, these encounter killings.
Yes, when the courts fail to convict, maybe due to lack of evidence, intimidation, or inefficiency, it creates this vacuum. Police might resort to encounter killings, which is obviously illegal. And then you have extremists getting released, which undermines safety and trust even further. It's a dangerous cycle.
He uses some really telling stories, too, like the one about the Bar Association president in Multan dictating notes to this struggling old clerk.
Yeah, that paints quite a picture, doesn't it? About potential hierarchies and maybe inefficiencies right within the legal profession itself. And that Pathan proverb he quotes, "The law is a bird belonging to the man who seizes it." That just perfectly captures the feeling of manipulation, especially during the unstable 1990s he describes.
And it wasn't just local stuff. He mentions governments trying to pack the Supreme Court, the lawyers fighting back with boycotts, Nawaz Sharif's actions against the Chief Justice. Yeah, it sounds like the whole system was often gridlocked or politicized.
Deeply politicized. Even the lawyers' movement, which fought for judicial independence, wasn't simple. Lieven points out it had progressive elements, sure, but also lots of conservative lawyers pushing their own agendas, too. It's complex.
Right. Okay, lastly, a note on kinship terms. Seems like a small detail, maybe, but Lieven insists it's absolutely fundamental.
Oh, totally fundamental. Kinship groups, family ties, tribal affiliations. These are like the basic building blocks of society and politics in Pakistan. Political support often works through these networks. It's about patronage, protection, appealing to your own group.
And he makes this interesting point about the remaining feudals, these powerful families. Their power isn't always just about land anymore. It's often about being the chief of a large tribe or kinship group. That leadership role is key, right down through all levels.
Exactly. It's about the authority that comes from that position within the social structure, maybe more than just hectares owned. And that hierarchy shapes everything.
And it's fascinating that he says many of these leading families aren't even ancient landowners. Some rose more recently, maybe through urban property, maybe corruption.
Yeah, but they adopt the same style, the same political behavior. They learn very quickly that appealing to kinship ties, using that system, is how you gain and keep power.
So it seems like that underlying structure, that kinship-based way of organizing things, is incredibly persistent.
It really is. It shows how deeply embedded these social structures are.
Okay, so wrapping up this first deep dive into Chapter 1.
Yeah.
What really stands out are these interconnected threads. You've got the massive vulnerability linked to water, the Indus, then this paradox of the economy, troubled but tough. Then the complex reality of justice, often informal, often distrusted, and finally, underpinning so much of it, this immense importance of kinship.
Yeah, those are definitely the key takeaways from these opening sections. Understanding that foundation, the environmental risk, the economic situation, how justice actually works on the ground, and the power of kinship. It's essential context for everything else Lieven discusses.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How does this complex interplay environment, economy, justice, kinship, how might that affect Pakistan's ability to tackle the huge challenges it faces both inside and out? These initial conditions, these gambles and structures, they seem like they'll be shaping the country's path for a long time to come.